Hi, I'm Admiral. In this video, I'll be playing all of Pokemon Ultra Sun with just one Kommo-o. I played a little bit of Sun when it first came out, but I never finished it, and I've never touched Ultra Sun or Ultra Moon. These games aren't sequels, so I'm actually not quite sure what they're supposed to be. They're not like Emerald or Platinum, I don't think, and they're not remakes either because that would just be silly. Ultra Sun and Moon only came out a year after regular Sun and Moon. Okay, I just spent about 20 minutes doing research into the Pokemon release model because it was bothering me that I didn't know what was happening here, and it turns out that these games are actually just like Crystal, Emerald, and Platinum. Those games are a third, quote-unquote, upper version that released in their generations. Ultra Sun and Moon are unique because they're the only paired uppers in this series so far, which is pretty neat. Moving on from that, let's talk about the real star of the video, Kommo-o. As Generation 7's pseudo-legendary, Kommo-o is a dual dragon fighting type Pokemon. That gives us all of the weaknesses of both types since they don't cover for each other at all, including a 4x weakness to fairy moves. But the types share no resistances either. That means we resist a total of 7 types while only being weak to 5, which isn't a bad ratio at all. We also boast an incredibly strong offensive stab type. We can hit steel types for super effective stab damage, which is incredibly helpful. The only problem I'm already thinking about is Mimikyu. As a ghost fairy Pokemon, Mimikyu is immune to any offensive stab moves we could normally use. Even worse, one of the few things I know about these games is that there is a mandatory battle against a buffed Mimikyu. I'm not looking forward to it, but luckily we have some options. Our moveset is nothing to sneeze at. Our level up moveset isn't anything overwhelmingly outstanding, but it does offer us our first opportunity to use Dragon Dance. With Dragon Claw and Close Combat, we'll have strong stab moves by the end of the game. Our TM list is even stronger, featuring constant companions like Earthquake and Aerial Ace. It also offers us a solution to Mimikyu in the form of Shadow Claw, but that relies on it being available before that fight, so we'll see what happens. Our base stats make pretty much any setup viable too. With a base physical attack of 110 and special attack of 100, Kommo-o can hit hard with just about anything. Our defensive stats are slightly better, with middling HP and speed to balance things out. Kommo-o is very much a jack of all trades in terms of its base stat distribution, so I'll see what I can do in terms of EV training to help out our speed and our offensive stats. In terms of its abilities, Kommo-o isn't working with anything special. With Bulletproof and Soundproof as standard abilities, Kommo-o can be invulnerable to bullet moves like Bullet Seed and Focus Blast, or sound moves like Perish Song and Sing. Overcoat, its hidden ability, just gives immunity to damage from weather, so hail and sandstorms don't hurt us. That's it. Overall, I definitely prefer Soundproof. It protects us from Sing and is the only ability to disable a fairy move, Disarming Voice. It's only one move, but that's one less thing to worry about. There are only a couple of more things to mention before we start, and this first one is kind of the elephant in the room. Generation 7 introduced a one-time mechanic in the form of Z moves. With the appropriate Z crystal as a held item, any move can become a more powerful version of itself. Kommo-o has a signature Z move called Clangorous Soul Blaze. It's a special move sporting a devastating 185 base power, no accuracy check, and an Omni boost. I have no idea if we'll end up able to use it during the run, but it's worth mentioning. Generally, I don't care for mechanics that limit our held item, which is why I'm not as crazy for Mega Evolution as some other Pokemon fans are, so we'll see how I feel about Z moves by the end of the run. Finally, I want to take a second to outline the rules for the run, since those are generally pretty important for challenges. The first rule is that I can only use Kommo-o for battles. I'll need other Pokemon for HMs and whatnot, but otherwise won't be using them. The second rule is that the challenge begins when I claim my starter and ends when I get into the Hall of Fame. Those are the only 2 rules for the run. Any strategies, items, or some other third thing are available to me otherwise. With that lengthy intro aside, it's finally time to get on with the run. As always, I write the entire script as I play the game, so you'll be getting mostly unfiltered thoughts as commentary. Since I've never finished a Gen 7 game before, you can also look forward to my opinions at the end of the run, so make sure to stick around for that. And now then, let's get started. The run begins as normal, I assume. Like I said, I've only barely played this generation. Anyway, I sit through a cutscene of a girl running from people that easily should have been able to overtake her, meet Professor Kukui, and claim my starter. I've elected to replace Popplio with Kommo-o, so I won't have to deal with its final evolution. After all, limiting my fairy-type battles as much as possible is the surest path to survival. I claim my Pokemon and realize I have no idea what to name it. I just sit there for way longer than I'd care to admit before going with George and moving on. I head to Iki Town with Kukui and meet up with Hao. He claims Litten as a starter, so we'll get to see one of my favorite Smash characters down the line. I meet the girl from the cutscene and her Pokemon, Nebby, and stage a daring rescue mission by battling exactly one Spearow. Instead of battling the rest of the Spearow, I decide it makes more sense to lie down on the old wooden bridge. Nebby explodes and we plummet into a ravine, but luckily Tapu Koko swoops in to save us. Oh hey, that one's in Smash too! Is this whole game just going to be a Smash reference? Anyway, the girl introduces herself as Lily, I meet the Kahuna, and go home for the day. The next day, Kukui has me sit through the catching tutorial, and I finally remember to check George's nature. We have a calm nature, so our special defense is better at the expense of our attack. To be honest, it's one of the worst natures we could have had. On the plus side, our ability is soundproof, so we've got that going for us. I head back to Iki Town for the festival and run into 2 Power Rangers on my way in. They're from Lily's cutscene earlier, so I know they're probably the villains of the game, but they don't bother me, so I don't bother them. I battle Hal for the festival, win handily, and go home. Lily drops by to take me to the professor the next day, where I get my Rotom Pokedex. After that, I have to do the trainer school, but it doesn't really take a lot of work, so I get through it pretty easily. I am getting pretty desperate for a new move though. Tackle isn't going to keep us going for much longer. Ideally, I need to get to the move reminder post-haste. Our signature move, Clanging Scales, is only available by evolution, but we technically have it at level 1, so getting it back is now our goal. Anyway, I have my first encounter with Team Skull, and then get forced to battle Alima. I'm starting to remember why I dropped Gen 7 the first time. The beginning to this game is absurdly long. I'm on page 3 of the script and don't have a single badge yet. Or whatever the equivalent is, I guess. Whatever, my point is that the intro to this game is slower than a turtle going uphill in the rain, and I don't like it. After another encounter with Team Skull, I arrive at the first island trial. However, an unfortunate encounter with a random trainer's Drifloon has made me aware of a problem I didn't think would actually come up this early. I can't hit Ghost-type Pokemon. Like, at all. Our only attacking move right now is Tackle, which is not only a dog-shit move, but it is a normal-type dog-shit move. So I make the painful decision to grind until we learn something new. More specifically, I have to get George to level 17 to learn Dragon Tail, a move that, in my opinion, is just atrocious. It only has 60 power, and it has 90 accuracy, and decreased priority, and in exchange for all of that, you make your opponent switch Pokemon. That's it. It's just an awful move. However, with it, we can tackle the first island trial. Once inside the cave, I find the TN for Brick Break. At first, I'm annoyed because I feel like I did all of that work to get Dragon Tail for nothing, but then I remember that Brick Break also can't hit Ghost types, so I feel better and just replace Tackle. Team Skull shows up again to interrupt my challenge, but George and I kick the crap out of them. After that, I challenge the Totem Gumshoes. The battle begins, and Totem Gumshoes gets a free defense boost. I have George use Work Up to offset its higher defense before it calls in an ally. Young Goose shows up, and now we're in a 2v1. To even the odds, George goes for Brick Break on the Totem and one-shots. Young Goose tries to avenge its friend with a tackle, but it does very little damage. On the next turn, I smack it with Brick Break and win our first trial after over 3 hours of play. I receive the Normalium Z for my efforts, which will give Work Up a bit of extra juice. On my way out, I run into the Power Rangers again, who introduce themselves as Zossie and Dulce. Even though Alima is supposed to be watching the entrance, it seems like he's just letting anyone in, since I've seen 4 people in here that don't have a single trial amulet between them. Despite Alima's shoddy work, they don't seem interested in battling and leave me in peace. Once I leave, Kukui asks me to help him find Lily. Once I find her, I learn that she's lost Nebby again, so it's up to me to reunite her with the funny little cloud. I get to it and immediately run into Dulce and Gobana again. This time they want the smoke, so George puts Furfru out of commission and rescues Nebby. After that, Howard decides he wants to get his ass kicked too. He sends out Litten first, so George sets up a workup before Litten hits her with the leer. One Brick Break takes it down, so Hao sends his Noibat out next. A super effective Dragon Tail from George forces Hao to switch out to Pikachu. Not because of its effect, but because it made Noibat faint. Pikachu hits a quick attack before also going down to Dragon Tail. Having better moves than Tackle really makes a difference. I get to battle the Melee Kahuna, Hala, next, so I make my way back to Iki Town. I also equip George with the Normalium Z to boost Workup. Hala leads with Matchup and I send out George. I open the Z Workup to boost my attack by 2 stages, and Matchup just goes for Focus Energy. A single Brick Break on the next turn takes it down, so Hala sends out Makuhita next. I have George use Protect. After my most recent Emerald playthrough, which you can watch on this very YouTube channel, I know that Makuhita should know Fake Out here, and I'm right as Hala uses it into Protect. On the next turn, I get greedy and use Work Up again, so now George is at +3 attack. My bad play gets punished as Makuhita hits a Sand Attack, so our follow-up Brick Break doesn't connect. Makuhita just uses another Sand Attack, but we connect on the next turn to take it down. Last is Crabrawler, who can't dodge a final Brick Break to close out the battle. We're rewarded with the Phytinium Z, so now I can power up Brick Break if I want. I also get to go to the next island, so I head back to Howley City to visit the marina. I'm forced to visit the photo shop before I can ride the boat, but then the game decides that no, I'd actually rather do Mantine Surf. I don't. So I have to do that instead. After wasting time with the tutorial and then sitting through the minigame, I finally end up on Akala Island. We've also finally reached the point of the game where I can offer a generic I do some story stuff before I beat How again and get ready for the next island trial. On the way there, I meet this game's resident edgelord, Gladion. I recognize his battle theme too, cementing in my mind that this entire game is just a big Smash reference. He's not too bad, except for his fucking legendary? Luckily, type null is normal, so 2 Brick Breaks take it down. After that, it's on to the Water Island trial. The trial itself is easy, so I'll just skip to the Totem fight. Totem Araquanid is our opponent, and resists Brick Break, so I'll have to rely on Dragon Tail to overcome it. I open with Z Workup before taking an Aurora Beam. Araquanid also calls on a Dewpider to help it out. On the next turn, I go for Dragon Tail, and it leaves Araquanid just above half health after George takes solid damage from an Aurora Beam bubble combo. I go for Workup to guarantee that my next Dragon Tail will kill, but George is so low now that she won't be able to survive another 2-piece combo from the bugs. I heal her back to full with a Super Potion, and then finish Araquanid off. Dewpider can't do anything to us in return, so another Dragon Tail finishes the battle. After that, I head straight to the Fire Trial. Totem Marowak is immune to Brick Break, so I've replaced it with Rock Tomb for this fight. It opens with Detect, so I get a free Z Workup in before it calls in a Salazzle for backup. On the next turn, George one-shot Salazzle with Rock Tomb, so we're back to a one-on-one as Marowak hits a decently hard Brick Break. On the next turn, George takes Marowak to half with a Rock Tomb. Marowak doesn't call for any more help, so one more Rock Tomb wins us the trial. After that, it's another straight shot to the Grass Trial. I normally try to go over major battles like this in detail, but this one is a combination of pretty slow and pretty easy, making it pretty boring. We resist grass and bug moves, so there's no danger here. Honestly, the only difficulty came from Comfy healing the Totem Morantis and boosting its defense, so I just had George use a bunch of workups, including one Z workup, to let me overpower it with a critical hit to one-shot. Next up is the Kahuna fight against Olivia. She uses rock types, so George should be able to sweep pretty easily with Z workup and Brick Break. But first, I have to hang out with Kukui in the Dimensional Research Lab, because apparently children are allowed to be in labs that research the literal multiverse. I get more exposition on Lily, get stared at by the blue eye of Sauron, and head out to the Kahuna. Olivia leads with Anorith, who outspeeds and hits George with Metal Claw. George responds with Z Workup, and I get greedy and go for another workup after. I figure I'll be safe to set up a bit as long as Anorith doesn't crit, but of course it crits right away, so I just go ahead and one-shot it. She sends out Lily next, who meets a similar fate. Last is Lycanroc, who also goes down to 1 Brick Break, winning a stupidly easy fight. After that, I find myself whisked away to the certainly too good to be true Aether Foundation, which also looks suspiciously like the place Lily was running through in the opening cinematic. We meet Lusamine, run from Nihilego, even though we technically don't know its name yet, and move on to Ula Ula Island. There, we do some story stuff and get ready for the Electric Trial. The Electric Trial pits us against a Totem Togedemaru, a dual steel electric type whose signature move, Spiky Shield, acts as a combination between Rocky Helmet and Protect. Add in the fact that we lose turns to Paralysis, my own need to Protect to avoid bounce damage, and time spent using Workup because Deden sent George to -6 attack with Charm after I'd already built up to +3, and this took about 10 minutes in real time. And that's with Speed Up and a Phytinium Z turn 1, so I promise you that you are not missing anything remotely interesting from this fight. We get the Electrium Z from Sophocles and get the heck out of here. Next up is my first battle against Guzma, Team Skull's boss. After some grinding to get some leeway on levels, George makes short work of Guzma's bugs, so next is just more story stuff. Unfortunately, there's neither anything interesting nor anything I can make a good joke about here, so I just move on to Tapu Village and the Ghost Trial. This is the one I was worried about towards the start, as we're going to face a Totem Mimikyu. Thankfully, we have Shadow Claw, a super effective move with a buffed crit rate, but I'm still not hopeful about this one being easy. I give it more than a few tries, but nothing really works out. Mimikyu gets an Omni Boost at the start of this battle, so it outspeeds and one-shots with Play Rough pretty much every attempt. On the few that it misses, George doesn't do enough damage to one-shot with Spell Tag Boost and Shadow Claw, so we just get one-shot on the next turn. Mimikyu missing happens so infrequently that there's no chance in hell I'll be able to live long enough to set up, so the only option is to grind. Technically, I could try to get a crit, but I honestly don't think a crit one-shots either, so I'd rather just get some levels. George hits high affection and level 50 before I know it. I mean that literally, I wasn't really paying attention to the actual level number at all. I didn't mean to level that high, I just kinda did. I only realized what I'd done because seeing a 50 on my screen snapped me out of my mindless grind. Hopefully that should be enough to get us through this. And if it isn't, at least affection boosts our experience yields. After several failed attempts, I end up with this one. Mimikyu's Omni Boost puts it in a speed tie with George, and it outspeeds to take her all the way down to yellow health with Play Rough. We retaliate with Shadow Claw to break Mimikyu's disguise, and it calls in a Banette for backup. I outspeed on the next turn, but accidentally target Banette to one-shot instead of smacking Mimikyu. Luckily, it misses its next Play Rough, but it's not looking good. George outspeeds and hits Shadow Claw, and to my amazement, it's a crit for the one-shot, winning the trial. I purposefully didn't get George's affection to the max to avoid cheesing it with the heightened crit chance, so that was just a raw dub for us. I go back to the Ether House with Acerola, where we learn that Team Skull swooped in to steal the children's Pokemon. Team Skull has also decided to single me out as Yungoose's liberator, so I head off for a Po-Town showdown. Unfortunately, it's locked behind a mandatory double battle. I fly home, grab a level 3 Pichu from Route 1, and head right back. Pichu gets to level 12 off of one Pokemon, but immediately faints after, so it doesn't end up doing anything, technically keeping us within the challenge's rules. I battle Guzma, but it's not too hard since George is quite a bit over level, and head back to Tapu Village, where I dump Pichu back into the box. We learn that Lily has been taken by Team Skull just before Gladion storms in and forces me to battle him. Even with Type Null, he isn't very dangerous to George, so it's not a hard battle. He drags me and Hao to the ferry, where I'm challenged by Nanu for what he presents as a warm-up battle. He uses dark types, so this isn't too scary. Nanu leads with his Sableye, who opens with Fake Out. On the next turn, we hit it hard with Dragon Claw to take it to yellow health. Sableye retaliates with the soft Power Gem before going down on the next turn. Next is Krokorok, whose Intimidate lowers George's attack stat. A Brick Break one-shots anyway, and Nanu sends out his last Pokemon, a Alolan Persian. It opens with Fake Out and outspeeds to hit a Dark Pulse on the next turn. Brick Break leaves it just above half health, so we have to take some more hits and deal with Nanu healing before we can finally finish it off. That was also apparently the grand trial, so Nanu is a dirty liar. Gladion reveals that Lily has been taken to Ether Paradise, so our next objective is laying siege to the headquarters of the most powerful organization in Alola. The crack squad of 3 precocious youths, sporting a pseudo-legendary, an actual legendary, and a wrestling cat, make their way through the man-made island without too much issue. I make it to the end and battle Lusamine, who just one-shots George with a Moonblast from Fable. Luckily, I apparently didn't need to win that fight, so Lusamami says I'm strong and jumps into the Blue Eye of Sauron, with Guzma right behind her. Now I have to do a bunch of story stuff so we can take Necrozma down, and it's really starting to dawn on me how fucking long this game is. Anyway, I trek through the story and make my way to the next trial site, abandoned in the middle of Pony Canyon. It's here where I face off against Totem George. On the first turn, I have George open with Dragon Dance. This ensures that we outspeed both Totem Kommo-o and the Noivern it brings into help after hitting George hard with Dragon Claw. On the next turn, I one-shot Noivern and suffer through another hit from Kommo-o, and then heal as it keeps going after George. The next turn sees it brought to yellow health off of a Dragon Claw from George, and it retaliates by bringing in another friend after hitting us hard. This time it's a Scizor, so I'm wary of a priority Bullet Punch. George and I take a couple of turns to heal, where I confirm Scizor's Bullet Punch damage range to be about 30 HP. Then I finish off Totem Kommo-o and take Scizor out with a couple of Brick Breaks, winning the fight and securing the Dragonium Z. Unfortunately, I'm about 95% sure that Commodium Z is locked in the post-game, which is really disappointing. Clangorous Soul Blaze, Kommo-o's signature Z move, is 99% of the reason why this Pokemon was so good in its generation, and so, well, not good afterwards, since Z moves were immediately scrapped. That means that Dragonium Z is our new best friend for the run. Anyway, I continue on my path and get to the Altar of the Sun. Here, we learn that Nebby has secretly been a legendary the whole time, so Lusamine's kids are now 2 for 2 on having legendaries. Guzma, Lusamine, and Necrozma also pop in to say hi, and Necrozma kidnaps Nebby and takes him back to Ultraspace. We follow them to the Ultra Megalopolis to try to save Nebby and the world. or maybe just Alola. The game isn't too clear on how much light Necrozma actually intends to steal. This is where things get dicey though. I have to beat an Omni-boosted Necrozma that also has 2 super effective moves. Every attempt I make ends with George getting outsped in one-shot, and on attempts where I'm able to survive and get off a devastating Drake, it still doesn't one-shot. So I either need to outspeed or one-shot, and I'm not sure which comes first here. Luckily, thanks to the work I did getting George to maximum friendship and my travels, I have a lot of rare candies. So every few levels, I'll give this a shot. I attempt all the way up to level 77, where I get this killer run. George dodges Necrozma's first attack from friendship, so we nail it with Devastating Drake to leave it with what must have been 1 HP. Since Necrozma outspeeds, I'm sure we just need one more level, but instead it misses again from friendship. That lets George finish it off with Dragon Claw and keeps us from having to overlevel by too much, which I always appreciate. This means that we have to start Mina's Fairy Trial. Beating her is pretty easy. Flamethrower handles Mawile pretty easily, and a held Citrus Berry keeps George healthy enough to take Granbull down without issue either. Rabombi is just another one-shot from Flamethrower, and we're through with no issue. That just leaves the actual trial, rematching several trial captains. That also leaves us with the true final boss of the run. Extreme Speed Smeargle, baby! Luckily, despite nearly getting Smeargled, the rest of the trial is pretty easy. Unfortunately, we still have to do a totem fight, because of course we do. And this one gets a double Omni boost. Who thought that was okay? Totem Rabombi one-shots with Dazzling Gleam roughly 95% of the time we try this, and can't get one-shot in return by anything George hits it with, which means it's time for some more levels. I'll use the last few rare candies in my bag and try to find somewhere to grind, because we're way too high level for this to be quick. I also have to make sure we don't over-level, but I'm not sure that's avoidable anymore. It's all the way at level 88 where I finally win. Experimentation has taught me that on a first turn where I don't attack, Pelipper comes out instead of Blissey, so I open with Dragon Dance instead of Continental Crush. Rabombi goes for Draining Kiss instead of Dazzling Gleam too, so we're in pretty solid shape on the next turn. I'd guess that using Dragon Dance would let us one-shot, but I didn't think it would also let us outspeed, so Rabombi is down before it can hit us again. That just leaves Pelipper, who sets up with Stockpile, so a single Rock Tomb takes it down in one go. Last up is the Grand Trial battle against Hapu, and then we're off to the Pokemon League. I swear, the rest of this game better be a cakewalk with how overleveled George is. Anyway, Hapu leads with Golurk, so George takes an Earthquake after setting up a Dragon Dance. We repeat the same series of events on the next turn, and then George one-shots with the Dragon Claw. Next out is Flygon, who we easily outspeed to one-shot. Mudsdale is the same, one-shot by a critical close combat. Last is Gastrodon, one-shot with Dragon Claw. I gotta say, the rest of the run's looking good. Next, I make my way up to the summit of Mount Lanakila to finish the game. On my way up, I see Necrozma, and manage to sneak by despite the PTSD I have from battling it in Ultra Space. I also finally meet the move reminder, and George learns her signature move, Clanging Scales. I'm so tempted to cheat and give myself Commodium Z so I can show you guys how broken it is, but I resist the urge, huff some Copium Z, and press on to the Pokemon League. As is tradition here, I'll also give you all one final stat check. Our defensive stats are pretty insane, especially our physical defense. Our attacking stats are nothing to sneeze at either, with speed to back it up. Dragon Dance will help out too, but I don't see myself needing to set up too much. We're so grossly over level that I can't see this not being amazingly easy. Now, on to the first battle. Our first challenge is against Mullane, a Steel Trainer. He leads with Klefki, whose Prankster ability gives its non-attacking moves priority. It hits George with a priority Thunder Wave, but George breaks through Paralysis to one-shot with Flamethrower. Friendship purges the Paralysis, and Mullane sends out Metagross. As good as our stats are, Metagross is still fucking scary, so I smack it hard with Inferno Overdrive to one-shot. Third up is Alolan Dugtrio, who also goes down to one Flamethrower. Fourth is Bisharp, and I use Flamethrower here too. It makes more sense on paper to use a quad-effective close combat, but this game is absurdly stingy with PP items. I only have a Max Elixir and a Max Ether to work with, so I need to conserve close combat and Clanging Scales as much as I can. Anyway, that one-shots too, so it's out to Magnezone. Flamethrower one-shots, except it doesn't because of Sturdy. Mullane misses Flash Cannon and heals on the next turn. It takes a few turns, but we never get hit and win the first battle. I like to challenge our dear pal Acerola next, who, obviously, uses Ghost types. She leads with Banette, who doesn't have anything particularly threatening. I have George open with 2 Dragon Dances as Banette just goes for Shadow Claws. After that, it's a one-shot on Banette. Acerola sends out Frostlass next, but we outspeed and one-shot again with Shadow Claw. Third is Palossand, also a one-shot. Fourth is Delmise, one-shot. Last is Drifblim, who goes down to our fifth and final Shadow Claw. I decide to battle the high-flying golfer next, Kahili. I don't think she does anything in the game other than act as an Elite Four member, which is a bit lame, but she leads with Braviary, which is less lame. George lands the bird with 1 Clanging Scales, so Kahili sends out her Mandibuzz next. It's able to survive a Clanging Scales in the yellow and retaliates with a nasty Brave Bird. A held Citrus Berry keeps George healthy enough to take another hit, but the recoil damage from Brave Bird just makes Kahili heal, so Mandibuzz is left in the yellow again from Clanging Scales. We finished on the next turn, so Kahili sends out Toucanon. Luckily, I prefer Cocoa Puffs, so Toucan Sam goes down to 1 Clanging Scales. Fourth up is Oricorio, and George one-shots it as well. Last is Hawlucha, who can't survive Clanging Scales either, so we win the only threatening Elite Four battle. Last is Olivia, who we've already beaten in this run. She's still rocking with rock types and leads with Armaldo. It doesn't have anything particularly threatening, so I have George open with the Dragon Dance. Armaldo misses his first Crush Claw, so on the second turn we use Dragon Dance again. This time Armaldo hits, so I have George one-shot with Close Combat. Next out is Probopass. Since I can't bypass Sturdy, I have George break it with Flamethrower. Probopass misses Thunder Wave and goes down to a quad-effective Close Combat on the next turn. Third up is Lycanroc, who can't survive Close Combat. Fourth is Gigalith, but he's just like Lycanroc. Last is Cradily, but it also can't survive a hit, and we're done with the Elite Four. And with that, I'm the champion. Except Hal wants the smoke too, so now I gotta deal with him. He leads with Raichu, who goes down to 1 Clanging Scales. Next out is Crabominable, so I use Dragon Dance to prep for the Intimidate on his Tauros. Crabominable slams us with Ice Hammer, so on the next turn George retaliates with Close Combat to one-shot. Third, we face off against Tauros, so our attack is back to neutral from Intimidate. We still one-shot though, and have to deal with Incineroar next. Another Close Combat takes it down, and we've won. Oh, wait, Leafeon. Flamethrower takes it down, so now we've won! With that, we've achieved championhood, entered the Hall of Fame, and the credits are rolling. So now it's time for my opinion on the game. This one was pretty alright. The beginning was absurdly slow, but once it picked up, I was pretty happy with it. Overall, it was just kinda mid, though. There was nothing incredible about it, but nothing too horrible either. I gotta say, Z-moves were pretty underwhelming, so I'm glad they didn't return in other games. The front half was pretty overstuffed with Team Skull, a lot of stuff I wanted was locked in the post-game, and I finally get to be in on all of the jokes about the player's blank expression throughout the entire game, but that's all I have to say about it. It really was just okay. All told, I definitely want to revisit this one for a normal playthrough one day, and maybe even make it a video. Anywho, this one took a long time to make, but I'm glad I finally made it happen. Next up will be a randomized playthrough of Pokemon Fire Red. I hate to not get right into the next pseudo run twice in a row, but this is going to buy me valuable time to figure out how the hell I'm going to set up Sword and, maybe, Scarlet. I still haven't decided if I want to do Gen 9 because those games are absurdly large, but I like Excalibur enough to at least consider it. With all of that said, I think that just about does it for this one. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. All of that will help me out, and comments let you provide valuable feedback so things keep improving over here. Thank you so much for watching.